Welcome to The Healing Life. I'm Amanda. This podcast is for people committed to healing, not as a finish line, but as a way of living. Every episode, we talk honestly about what it actually looks like to keep choosing healing as life unfolds. When things get better, when they get harder, and when another layer shows up. Let's get into it. I think I've been told my whole life to be afraid of aging. And that's everywhere. It's from the beauty industry that is constantly telling women that it's a crime to grow older. Like, how dare we get wrinkles? How dare our hair turn gray? How dare we lose collagen in our skin? And socially, this is a way we orient to women that we don't put on men. Men become more attractive as they age and they become silver foxes. But women become irrelevant. And I just don't agree with that. And I am actively combating that belief system, not just within myself, my own heart and mind and body, but also in what I try to put out there into the world, and especially what I try to model now that I have a daughter. And I've spent a good portion of my life looking at that cultural narrative. But when you actually look into it, when you research it, when you sit with people, there's a different story that emerges, and it's a far more hopeful one. So I want to talk about that story today. I want to share a little bit about my evolution in terms of identity and how I'm approaching middle age. And also because I don't know if you can feel it, but I feel the rise of women. I think that the pressure and oppression women have survived under patriarchy has shaped and honed something powerful and beautiful. And I feel it rising. I feel it every single day. I feel it in the women around me. I feel it in the news cycle. Women are rising. Middle age and caring for women as they go through perimenopause and menopause is starting to become part of the national conversation. There are powerful voices leading that charge to reclaim health and vitality for women as they age. That is part of the story. I think that there's also a spiritual and mental, emotional reclamation that is going on for women as well. But having some of the health issues women face, every woman who's lucky enough to live to perimenopause and menopause will go through it. So having some of the medical support, having better understanding, having the black box label removed from hormone replacement therapy finally after over 20 years of misinformation about hormone replacement therapy and the risks and benefits. Things are changing, things are moving, and I'm trying to be part of this wave of reclamation that I feel happening at a national level here in the US. And I think it's also happening globally. The cultural narrative is that women disappear as they age. The actual story, the truth is that women become something powerful and honed and magnificent as they age. And my story of trying to step into this becoming, step into the power I feel now as a 38-year-old started about 10 years ago when I made a radical choice to change my entire life. I had gone from being owned by a cult to being in a marriage where I didn't have a lot of say in what happened. My ex-husband would make some pretty big moves without my input or despite my input. And I ended up as a military spouse who sacrificed her career for my ex-husband's. I followed him around, duty station to duty station. I made horrible money. My education took longer than it otherwise would have. I didn't have access to some of the institutions of higher education that I would have preferred. So I had to work with what was available. And I decided one day that I was going to change my whole life because I didn't think my marriage was going to last. I was going to pursue a career that could guarantee me some financial stability as I moved. And I knew I would probably still move wherever he moved because he would outrank me. and his career would be prioritized over mine, but at least I would have a job everywhere I went, and the job would pay the same or more, instead of one time I took a 50% pay cut to move with him. So it was a long process. It took a couple years from initiation to actually getting to officer basic training, but I did it. I commissioned as an officer before I had things figured out about myself. I was learning, I was growing, I was trying to establish my identity. But I was also coming from a place of having been told my identity my whole life, first by the cult I grew up in, and then by my ex-husband. And then I kind of rejoined a cult. The military definitely tells you who you are, so the military decided my identity for a while there too. But I chose myself. I chose myself fully before I really knew what I was choosing. And I did change my life, and I did set myself up for that inevitable divorce. And I did not make it through that unscathed, but I had health insurance and I had a paycheck, which were two things I didn't have before my job in the military. And I went through a lot during my time in the military, not just with military-related things, but there was sexual assault. There were a lot of health issues. It was a really rough time, but also in terms of my actual job in the military, a very fulfilling and rewarding time. I was a flight director and then test director for experimental satellites. And I loved the nerdiness of it all, guys. It was fun. It was so stressful, but I really enjoyed it. And I learned a lot, and I became a lot more confident through that process, through the training, through being put on the operation floor in charge of everything, figuring it out as I went. And I noticed that the older I got, the better I felt about myself, about other people. All right, let's be honest. Like, I also don't like people, but I like people. It's complicated. But I realized that a lot of my internalized judgment and stigma and just some of the things that I was definitely raised with in terms of how I viewed other people, they melted away with time and age and experience. And the horrible views I had of myself, many of which were also shaped in my childhood and through my previous marriage, those melted away. I felt like it was the complete opposite of what I've been told. Like, aging is bad. It gets worse. Like, you just fade into nothingness. You fade into irrelevance. And I found that the older I got, the more I liked myself in my life. And I'm sure many of you listening could probably say the same, or would probably say the same. I think we've been sold a lie really effectively. So let's talk about what's actually true. A 20-year study that was published in 2022 found that young adults showed a 47% reduction in stress reactivity over time. They got less stressed the older they got. So that's not just that life gets easier, because we all know life tends to life. It gets more complex. It gets more layered. There's more nuance. I feel like the longer you live on the planet, the more opportunities there are to experience pain from a variety of sources. So it's not that life gets easier, it's that we get better. We get better over time. We keep becoming. That definitely wasn't part of the narrative of aging I grew up with. 2 studies by the same researcher published in 2020 and 2025 found that people in late midlife tend to narrate their lives as journeys of humanistic growth. They have less regret and more self-satisfaction. So what does humanistic growth actually look like and mean? The researchers found that it meant a difference in how people told stories about their own lives as they aged. They told stories about finding peace with the past, feeling connected to something bigger than themselves. They found commitment to continued learning and knowledge, knowing that you belong somewhere, growing into who you were meant to be, and holding your beliefs with openness instead of rigidity. And the researchers called this self-transcendence, meaning people found closure, interconnectedness, lifelong learning, self-actualization. And this is the most fascinating piece to me personally, and you'll see why in a moment. People who scored the highest in well-being and self-acceptance by late midlife tended to be the people who had experienced the most cumulative adversity. What a concept. I love that so much. That aligns with my spiritual beliefs. I believe that we come here to learn and to grow so that our souls can continue evolving. And one of my radical beliefs that I don't talk about a whole lot, but I think we know a lot of the stuff we're going to experience in our lives, and we endorse it. We sign on knowing that we're going to go through a lot of adversity. Those studies demonstrate some proof for that the adversity isn't the detour. The adversity is the path. The adversity is the reason. It's why we're here. It's what we signed up for. We're here to learn and grow and become more than we were when we arrived on the planet. And as we do that, because we're fulfilling what we came here to do, that self-actualization, that self-transcendence increases over time as we have more opportunities to do what we came here to do and learn what we came here to learn. And I don't know about you, but I find that just immensely comforting and hopeful. And it inspires me every day to keep trying, even though things can be very hard sometimes, to remember this isn't just happening to me. Like, I'm not just a victim of my own life. I believe I picked this. I believe I signed up for this, and I'm trying to do well. I'm trying to finish the course. And it's interesting because that maps onto some religious concepts that I'm not super comfortable with religion, but I'm very comfortable with spirituality. So I'm going to try to connect the two here. But in Christianity, which is the religion I grew up in, the cult I grew up in, identified as Christian, we would talk about like finishing the race and getting to heaven and God being like, well done, my good and faithful servant. And I don't believe in that God anymore. And I don't follow the Christian religion. I want me to be able to say that to me, like, you did it. You signed up for this. Okay, this makes me a little emotional. You signed up for this, and it was really hard sometimes, but you wanted to learn and you wanted to grow. And guess what? You did it. With age comes more and more clarity about who we are and what we're about and why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing. Again, the cultural narrative is wrong. It doesn't get worse as we age. It gets better. We step into our identity. We get more clarity about ourselves. That's definitely been the case for me. Clarity creates the conditions for more knowledge about ourselves, and that is what makes healing possible. That clarity, that knowledge of ourselves, that commitment to ourselves. That is why we keep stepping into healing spaces and doing healing work, no matter how hard it is. And when you can finally get to a point where you see what you're working with, it makes it that much more accessible to step into healing spaces and do healing work. Knowing that I needed to address CPTSD in my 20s, knowing that I needed to leave my marriage, my previous marriage in my early 30s, knowing that I needed to create safety for myself to process some of the things that I've lived through. And most recently getting to a place of realizing like, hey, these symptoms that I've lived with and suppressed probably have a name and I probably need to address it, and hence my autism diagnosis. So it's a good thing to grow old. It's a good thing to age and to have more trips around the sun and more time to sit with yourself and see yourself and know yourself and figure out where you're hurting and where you're thriving, and feed the areas that are thriving and tend to the areas that are hurting. And I think that's part of the reason we need to have more conversations about how middle age is not the beginning of the end. It is the beginning of the glorious years where you have enough autonomy and agency and self-knowledge and confidence, and you start to be grounded in your worth and your value and your mission in this life. You have enough to move forward and do the increasingly complex work of growing and healing. I think we tend to be told culturally again that if we haven't accomplished something incredible by midlife, we've missed the window, we've failed, we're going to fade into irrelevance. And I just don't buy that. I don't believe it. This is the moment when we finally have enough of all of the different things we need to rocket ourselves forward in whatever we came to this planet to do. We finally have the experience and wisdom. We're finally interesting. We're so much more interesting at this age than we were in our teens and 20s when we were told we were the most relevant. So it's not too late. It's exactly the right time. This is exactly the right time. So I'm going to keep talking about this. This is the last episode of season 1. I'm going to take a 2-week break to record season 2 and get it ready to release to you. And I'm really excited about some of the conversations we're going to have in season 2. I'm going to get into mother wounds and infertility and the crazy, circuitous, wild ride, too much drama road to having a family. I'm going to bring on some guests. We're going to talk with a behavioral finance specialist and certified financial therapist about trauma and money and how different experiences in our lives can impact our relationship with money and what to do about it, how to heal from that, how to move through it. But I think what I want to leave you with for today and for the next 2 weeks is that it's exactly the right time. You're exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You're growing, you're learning, you're changing, you're becoming more and more of who and what you came here to be. So take a deep breath and give yourself a break because culture's got it wrong. We've all been fed a lie our whole lives. Life does not end in middle age. This is just the beginning. And it's going to be amazing. Thanks for spending this time with me. Take what you need, leave the rest, and keep moving in the direction of your healing. If this episode resonated, share it with someone who needs it. That's how we all find each other. Subscribe to The Healing Life wherever you listen, and I'll see you in the next episode as the journey continues.